Otabek Kholmatov versus Raymond for 12 rounds for the WBA featherweight title. Let's get into it. Let's start with Kholmatov. 12 wins, no losses, 11 wins by way of knockout. This is the first time that I've heard about him, right? So when you haven't heard about someone, what do? You go on the box rec, you check out the records, and you try to see who they fought. You try to get a feeling from them before you even watch the tape. And when you look at Kholmatov, the thing that jumps off the charts of the paper is, yo, this guy in his fights, he's only had one fight that has went the distance. Now, his first 7 fights were against opponents who were either fighting for the first time in their career or they've had a bunch of losses on their resume. So can't really say too much about that. In 2021, he fought Juan Pena, who had a record of 32 wins. I want to say 11 or 12 losses, if I remember correctly. He's a Dominican fighter who has a little bit of pop in his shots. But the thing is, in his 12 fights that he's lost, he's been stopped 11 times. So he made short work of him. So again, we still weren't sure how really good that he is. The following year, he fought Andranik Gorian, who at the time had a perfect record of 11 wins, but not a whole bunch of knockouts, right? This was also his first 12-round fight. So we were going to see how he would fare against an undefeated fighter and how he would fare in a 12-round fight. Kholmatov has a very nice jab, man. He's got a long reach. So he pushes that jab out effortlessly, and it's an accurate jab. Every shot with him is precise, not a whole lot of wasted motion, right? The jab for him really helps him control the tempo and the pace and the range of the fight. He's got very long and rangy arms, and he used that to his advantage. He was having his way with Gorian, right? Using that range to kind of lull him into shots and getting out of range just as quickly. He was landing some nice jabs, nice body shots, nice uppercuts, and all coming behind that long, rangy jab. Jab to the head, boom, rip the body with the right hand, step back, jab with the right. So he does a lot of things behind the jab. He's ambidextrous in his shots. So he's able to use both hands, and both hands has pop in it. So you got to be careful of that because he can hit you at range while he is out of range physically. And he also, in that fight against Gorian, did some very tricky things, like the way how he's able to slip in certain shots. Like he has an up jab that he's able to slip in. So Gorian had a nice high guard that looked tight and ready, but Kholmatov would find a way how to get a shot in. And you're like, wait a minute, this man really is really crafty and tricky like that inside of the ring. And it's not something that you expect from him because the way how his mannerisms are, he's very calm, very poised, but he's very confident. Like you can see that he believes in himself, and he does some things that you don't really see a lot of Uzbekistan fighters do. Like against Gorian, man, he had his back behind his arm and kind of taunting a little bit. And you're like, yo, where you get that from? You know what I'm saying? Where you get that from? So he's very interesting to watch, but this is a guy who was very confident, and I think he has the skill to back it up. Gorian didn't have too much of a power, right? You think at the time he only had 3 or 4 wins by way of knockout. So you know he didn't have the power to really back up Kholmatov, and it definitely showed. I thought he did a great job of trying to do things to take risks, like lunging forward. Sometimes Gorian looked like he was running at Kholmatov, trying to do something in desperation, and sometimes it would land, but more times than not, Kholmatov would just slip back, use his foot to get out of the way, and slip in shots. So he knows how to handle the pressure. He knows how to not panic under duress. He handles it well. His body control is very sound, very efficient. He knows where he is inside of the ring. But there were times that he did get clipped cleanly. Absolutely. I think part of that too is because his arms are so long, right? And so he can't get back into defensive mode very quickly. He can't just be offensive 1 second and then snap it back and be defensive. So he is there to get countered. And there are times when he's pulling back on his shots and he's getting caught. When he fought Thomas Patrick Ward, that was his toughest test yet. And I believe at the time, Ward was undefeated, right? And Ward had This was probably one of the more notable names that Kholmatov has fought. This is a guy Ward has fought Jazza Dickens and beat him, right? And early on, Ward was doing well, man, but he was doing well for like a moment. He was staying on his toes and he was countering very well and he was landing cleanly throughout that fight against Kholmatov, but he just didn't have any steam on it to really gain his respect. Kholmatov would just come forward, and he's so rangy and he's explosive, man, where he can close the gap in a second and hit you. Ward found himself on the ropes, trying to retreat, blocked a shot. Kholmatov came over with the left hand, and next thing you know, Ward was on the canvas. And you got the sense after that, because he did not look good. He was cut. Ward gets cut often, but he was cut. Blood was gushing down. And you got the sense after the first knockdown that this fight had an expiration date to it. And the expiration date was any round now. Any round now. Ward got back on his feet. Next round, he was fighting a little bit better, but he was getting beat on, man. He was getting broken down every single round. He was fighting back, doing what he could, but every shot after that was landing more cleanly, more effectively, and more force and power behind it. Headshots, body shots, rib shots. It was a great display of the variation of shots that Kholmatov possesses and he can put forth. And I thought Ward did have some good moments where he did hit him cleanly. Ward had better hand speed than any of the opponents that Kholmatov has fought to this point. But it wasn't enough. There wasn't any power behind it. It wasn't consistent. So Kholmatov eventually broke him down, man. Broke him down in 5 rounds. If you have not heard about him before, man, this is a guy that can fight. Like, I thought he looked very well, very impressive in his recent fight, especially against Ward. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. He was getting hit cleanly when Ward was in the fight, you know, but this is a guy that can be a problem, man. And he can make this a tough night for Raymond Ford, right? He seems to be one of those opponents, one of those athletes that are able to rise to the occasion, always poised. And those are guys who are always a threat. You know what I'm saying? So, but at the same time, he hasn't faced anyone quite with the full package and skill set that Ford possesses. But I like his style. I like his poise. I like his confidence. And even though he hasn't faced anyone quite like Raymond Ford, that doesn't mean that he can't rise to the occasion. To me, I get the sense that he has the potential to do that. And I'm expecting him to do that on the night. Let's talk about his opponent, Raymond Ford. 14 wins, no losses, 1 draw, 7 wins by way of knockout. To get to this point, man, Ford had to go through some questionable fights, right? And that started when he fought Perez, his first draw. Perez knew that he wasn't going to just come in and be able to outbox Ford, so he had to find different ways how to make it an uncomfortable fight and how to make that fight work in his favor. So he had to be aggressive. He had to pressure him. He had to stick to him. He had to outwork Ford. He had to be a volume guy, and he had to hit what he could hit when he could hit it. We know Ford is always laterally moving and always knows where he is inside of the ring and always makes sure he's not on the ropes too long, right? So Perez knew when he was close to him, he had to make it pay. He had to hit whatever that was in front of him. The other thing, too, was Ford wasn't moving his head off of the line, so he was getting clipped. There were times when he would get the better of the exchange with his counters, but Ford was always pulling his head back, man, and then trying to move him. Perez would just come over the top, and he would be clipping him with consistent shots just like that. The improvement in the ring awareness of Raymond Ford, I think it happened after that fight, because when he was fighting Perez, man, he was staying on the ropes a little bit too much, and he was trying to get back to the center of the ring. Perez kept the pressure on him and didn't allow him to do just that. Ford did a great job going to the body to back up Perez, but he wasn't as consistent as he was throughout that fight. He would do it here and there, but it wasn't really enough for Perez to really be discouraged, man. He just kept coming forward. So I thought that fight was a good fight. I thought if it was a 10-round fight, Ford probably would have got the nod and separated himself a little bit more, because he did come on strong, especially in the last 2 rounds. But it was a good fight nonetheless. Thought Ford was a little bit emotional with his responses at times. Rather than trying to hit the head and get his get back, he should have just been a little bit more strategic and go to the open target because his body was completely open. After that, Ford went on to fight Edward Vasquez. I remember people were writing Vasquez off because he had no power. But Vasquez isn't chopped liver, man. And I felt like that fight was a lot closer on paper. Obviously, on paper is one thing and inside the ring is another thing. And as they say, right, styles make fights. And Vasquez, while he doesn't have the power, he's aggressive and he throws a lot of punches and he can take a shot. Right. I thought it was going to be a tough fight for Ford because Ford doesn't always let his hands go. He's a little bit hesitant at times. And there are times when he has gotten outworked. Anytime Vasquez missed, Ford was looking to return fire, looking to counterpunch, looking to hit him and hit him with something big, right? And Vasquez is a guy who can switch stances, right? He can be orthodox, he can go southpaw. So that was also something that Raymond Ford didn't get the credit because he had to adjust on the fly. And I thought he did a good job of doing that under the duress and the pressure that Vasquez was putting on him. But in my opinion, man, I thought Vasquez outworked him in that fight. So I wouldn't have felt a ways if they would have given it to him, right? Because Ford did land the more eye-catching shots, but Vasquez, to me, was more consistent. His volume was better. He was kind of the one that was dictating more of how the fight was going. I thought Ford did a really good job of not letting the pressure get to him where he was being reckless in what he was trying to respond with. Right. But I just thought Ford was too patient in that fight. And sometimes his patience can work against him. But these are all things as a young fighter you're trying to work out. And these are the experiences that has prepared him for what happened in his most recent fight against Jesse Magdaleno, a southpaw like Ford, a former champion, right? Someone who's fought Nonito Donaire where he took his belt, right? Someone who's fought Isaac Dogboe. He lost to Dogboe, but he still got the experience in a quality opponent. So this was going to see where Ford was as far as fighting in that championship pedigree, that championship level, as he is facing a former champion. He's had some shaky fights. So we were going to see, where were you? Where are you? How are you going to fare against an opponent like Magdaleno? And I got to say, this was the version of Raymond Ford that we were waiting to see because he fought a great fight, man. He looked sharp offensively and defensively. He weathered the early storm of Magdaleno. He stayed patient, find his rhythm, find his groove. Magdaleno has good timing and Ford has good speed. And if the timing isn't right, the speed is going to be the one to take over. And Ford was really a step ahead of Magdaleno in this fight, right? Ford was beating him to the punch every single round. And it started to stretch out a little bit more after the third and the fourth round. Magdaleno would just be missing certain punches and boom, Ford would make him pay. Made him pay so much in the fourth round that he scored a knockdown. Magdaleneo's timing was just slightly off and Ford came through with combinations and a shot that caught him kind of on the side of the face, slightly behind the back of the head, but it was enough to put him down. And after that, you could see momentum was all in Raymond Ford's side, all in his favor. That was a fight where you could see the ring IQ of Ford, man, just kind of took another couple notches up, right? He never overextended himself. He let his hands go much earlier, more consistently, right? And he just looked good. He just looked very, very poised. And the maturity of the experiences of the quality of guys that he has fought before, it really all came together in this fight for him. Every time he was on the ropes, couple seconds after he would find himself in the center of the ring, he would maneuver back to where he could be the one to dictate the pace, to change movements, and to give different looks. It was a fight that I also noticed too, man. Raymond Ford's nickname is Savage, right? It was a fight that he finally started to look for the knockdown and tried to take the risk in getting it. Right? He let his hands go a lot more, and that's the thing with him. He's an accurate puncher who's got good power with good hand speed, but he doesn't always take that risk. He's not always looking to really hurt his opponents. He's just trying to beat his opponents up. But this fight, man, you could see he was really trying to impose his will and show that, man, you were once a champion, but I'm the new kid here on the block who is on my way to a championship fight, championship opportunity. And he scored another knockdown in the 11th round with combinations. And he just looked very, very good, very, very sound to me in that fight. This version of Raymond Ford, man, is a tough version to beat. So if he comes in looking like that, yo, this is going to be a great, great fight. So who wins? When I heard about this fight, man, and found out who the favorite was, I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, Ford's not the favorite, right? And when I turned the tape on, I could understand why they're not saying Raymond Ford is the favorite. Kholmatov, man, he's got the goods, man. He might be a little rough in some areas, right? But he can be a problem. And he could be a problem for Raymond Ford in this fight. However, as I just mentioned, if the version of Raymond Ford that fought Jesse Magdaleno, man, shows up on the night, yo, it's tough to beat that version. But the version that I saw of Kholmatov that fought Ward, that version's a tough version to beat as well, too. So I'm expecting from both of these men to come in and come forth and put together a spectacular performance and bring the best out of each other. I like Ford by decision. I think both of these guys are athletes, fighters who rise to the occasion. But I think the speed and the hand speed of Ford is going to be an advantage, and it's going to work in his favor. Kholmatov does a lot of things really well, but the speed and the timing are things that could give him trouble if he can't find his groove early in the fight. I'm not counting him out. No one should count this man out. I really like what I saw. I really like what he can do inside of the ring. But I think the speed of Ford is going to play a factor in this fight. And he has to stay off the ring, and he cannot be moving around with his hands down. He's got to be on his P's and Q's because Kholmatov has that type of accuracy and length and power to be able to make him pay. But I like Raymond Ford to win this fight by decision. What are your thoughts on this fight? Who do you have winning this one? Let me know in the comment section below. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a couple ways that you can do so. You can like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support by way of donation, you can find options in the description below. Also, my Cash App handle will be on screen as well. Any amount goes towards the growth of this channel. It will be greatly, greatly appreciated. Shout out to all the members holding down the membership section. I appreciate each of you as well. So with all that being said, if you've been watching the video, this time do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see you next time.